Okay, this is Greg Palast reporting for Rolling Stone. You can get this story about the GOP's secret plan to wipe out up to 1 million voters by this November. It's a story I've started covering before on the air with you. It's about a guy named Chris. Wait, let me start again. Donald Trump has said that this election is fixed, and it is because there are people voting many, many times. Well, the election is indeed rigged, but the rigging is being done by Trump's cronies, in particular his big supporter, the right-wing fanatic Secretary of State of Kansas, Chris Kobach, who has gathered the entire voter files of 30 states controlled by Republicans, especially those swing states, Ohio and North Carolina and Arizona, which I'm really concerned about. And what they're doing is they are quietly, without any notice, they're quietly knocking off hundreds of thousands of voters across these 30 states, accusing them of what Donald Trump was saying, of voting many, many times, people voting multiple times. Now, that's a federal crime. You vote twice, you go to prison for 5 years. They've arrested about 3 people, but Virginia alone knocked off, while the Republicans controlled it, 41,000 people. And we are looking at 100,000 being knocked off by Ohio. They have 500,000 on their suspect list. North Carolina has over 250,000 people on their suspect list, and they're removing them by handfuls. And guess what, Tom? It's people it's voters of color. You've got the names that they're wiping off, and we've got their confidential lists. That's one thing they didn't expect. Their lists are confidential. I've got them. Mm-hmm. And the names are Rodriguez, Mohammed, Garcia, Kim. In other words, Democrats.
They're looking for ethnic minorities, basically.
Yeah, minorities. And so we are looking at a mass wipeout of minority voters. This is very similar to what I did in 2000, finding a computer list of black people who were removed, falsely being accused of felons. This is
you busted Catherine Harris for that, as I recall.
Yes, we got Catherine Harris, exposed that one. Unfortunately, we exposed it while she was at the Bush inauguration.
Right.
And so I don't want this story to come out at the Trump inauguration, not that I'm for one candidate or another, but I do believe that even black people should be allowed to vote in America, and they're going after those, the minority voters. It's a cruel and silent system. And for Rolling Stone, I was able to jump Chris Kobach, the Republican Secretary of State who's conducting this vicious racial purge in quiet. And he wouldn't talk to me, so I went to a ice cream social that he was holding in a public park as a Republican Party fundraiser. And I got one of those microphones and had a custom-made little cube put on it with the number 4 and went in with cameras. So he thought I was a local news guy until he realized who it was. By that time, I'd already was shaking his hand and would not let go. And by the way, the number 4 is not a fake. Channel 4 of London wanted the footage, so it wasn't a fake.
Okay.
And but anyway, he thought that I couldn't get his list, Tom, but I had his secret cross-check list with the names he was knocking off. People like Maria Cristina Hernandez.
Right.
She lost her vote because a woman named Maria Isabel Hernandez in another state had voted, and they said the 2 Maria Hernandezes are clearly the same person, just faking using 2 different middle names. This is how they did it. They were matching first name, last name. That's how they match it. That was it. And that means you catch all the ethnics, last names Hernandez, people like Maria Hernandez, James Brown, Jesse Jackson, David Lee, David Kim. That's who gets nailed, and it's a beautiful system for quietly wiping out minority voters.
So Mrs. Hernandez or Ms. Hernandez is going to show up at the polls in whichever state that she was purged
Georgia
from.
and Virginia, yeah.
Okay, and so she's going to show up at the polls in Virginia thinking that she's a registered voter. She's been voting all along. And what's going to happen when she shows up at the polling place?
She's going to be told she's an inactive voter. Now, people don't know what is an inactive voter. She say, but I've been voting the last 4 elections. Doesn't matter, lady. What they do is they send out a postcard. Most people don't even it's junk mail. You kind of throw it away. That says you're supposed to verify your address. And especially in low-income areas, you don't get the mail. Students move, renters move. And so this is another thing which biases the list, which, by the way, has 7 million names on it.
Oh, my God.
And if you don't return that postcard, you lose your vote. You're called an inactive voter. Now, you're active, but you didn't return the postcard. And so we have found, like Virginia, very quickly removed 41,000 voters. We are looking at 100,000 already removed from Ohio.
Does Virginia have a Republican Secretary of State?
Oh, Republican is one word for it.
Yeah, okay, because Terry McAuliffe, a Democrat, is the governor, but
yeah. Well, Ohio is Kasich, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, and we have the Republican Secretary of State is not a Kasich type. He has dripping fangs, and he makes Katherine Harris and his predecessor, Blackwell, who fixed the 2004 election.
So back to Hernandez. When she shows up at the polling place in Virginia, she's going to be told you're an inactive voter, and she's going to say, but I want to vote anyway. They're going to give her a placebo ballot?
Yeah, well, it's technically called a provisional ballot. I call them placebo ballots because they make you feel like you voted.
But it doesn't actually get counted.
It's very easy to knock them off. For example, if Maria Hernandez was put down as an inactive voter, she can fill out 25 placebo ballots. They can't count her vote. They will not, and they can't count her vote.
Because she's not on the voter list.
Her namesake in Georgia loses her vote, too. See, that's the...
Really? They knock them both off?
They knock off both. Because, see, they say they're the same person, and because she's voted in 2 states, she loses her vote in both states.
Well, why, if they're alleging that she committed a federal felony, we just have a little less than a minute left, Greg, why don't they prosecute her?
No kidding. I've actually confronted Kobach, and I said, how many prosecutions? 3 in his... he's gotten 3 people for voting twice, actually registering twice.
Right.
And the worst purges in Ohio. Ohio had found 1 person. They've knocked off over 100,000 people. North Carolina, 0. Georgia, 0. This is what's happening. Arizona, 0.
0 people voting twice, registering twice, but hundreds of thousands of people being knocked off the voting rolls because they have an ethnic name.
That's right. And it is one of the, so that's why and you always know that the hint is whenever Republicans start screaming vote fraud, that's always the cover for election fraud that they commit. So
and this is why Trump is running.
They start going through the rolls. Right.
This is why Trump is running around going, people are going to vote 5 times. He's setting this up in the minds of the Republican voters to accept, everybody's mind, to accept this. It's amazing. Greg Palast, you do the very best investigative reporting. It's over at rollingstone.com, gregpalast.com. Thank you, Greg.
You're the best, Tom. Thanks.
You too.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.